French rugby dominated European rugby proceedings at the weekend with wins for Toulon and a second consecutive win for La Rochelle against Leinster in one of the all-time great Heineken Cup finals. It's time for us to look ahead to the Gallagher Premiership final this weekend between Saracens and Sale, and joining me and the full house of columnists to do so is one of Sarri's standout players of the year, Alex Lozowski. La Rochelle are back-to-back champions after what was, a thrilling spectacle, to say the least, at the Aviva, and the biggest comeback in a Heineken Cup final ever. We'll look back at that game at the end of this episode, but first of all, let's look ahead to the big one this weekend, the all-important Gallagher Premiership final between Saracens and Sale at Twickenham on Saturday. We've got the full house of columnists, and joining us today is one of Saracens' standout players of the season in Alex Lozowski. How are you doing, Alex?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. So it's game week. Talk us through the sort of plan for the week, if you can.
Yeah, so Monday normally quite more of a relaxed day than a Tuesday. So get in the forwards, will go through their lineouts, walk through those setups, do a few scrum setups, backs, get in the gym, do some weights, and then the afternoon come together, go through our maps and a few kickoffs and things like this, sort of formations to make sure we know all our detail. And then tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, we'll have sort of our big training session where we try and put it all together under a bit of fatigue, under a bit of pressure. Wednesday off, and then Thursday team run, just to sort of sharpen things up a little bit. And then Friday off, get our energy before Saturday.
Do you do, Alex, at this very late stage of the season, anything that could be construed as a full contact session, or is it really tapering off now?
Yeah, no full contact, no sort of 15 versus 15 full contact. Do a lot of sort of bag work, tackle bags, practicing sort of tackle technique, obviously, which is important, even more so these days. And sort of breakdown work, but all that's with bags and shields and stuff like that. So thankfully, the days of full contact in training are behind us now, which is good.
Now, tell me, Alex, in a lot of the discussion in previewing this final, Sarries have been billed as favourites. Do you guys feel like favourites?
I don't think it's necessarily a feeling that we have. I think what we do know is that we put together a pretty strong season. I think along with Sale, probably it is the two consistent teams in the league. The only two teams that really have played consistently well all season. So I suppose in that sense, it's good that this is the final. Two teams that deserve to be there. I think we just know that we've put together a good season, and that we've been building towards this, and we want to play well on the weekend, to sort of put all that hard work into practice, and finish off with on a good note, really, which obviously we didn't do last season, having again been with Leicester, the two best teams, and on the day we couldn't put our game together to beat them. So now it's about we really want to do that this weekend, and put our best foot forward.
How much did you feel, Alex, that Richard Wigglesworth had quite a big hand in what went on in last year's cup final? And Alex Sanderson obviously knows Saracens pretty well.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. So how much of a factor are those things, do you think, when it comes to a cup final?
Yeah, I think. Firstly, I think, like you said, Wiggy delivered a bit of a masterclass in how to play against Sarries, I think, last season, which was something that we were probably expecting, but didn't necessarily have the tools to deal with it, or we weren't open to deal with it, if that makes sense, in last season's final. which is why we came unstuck. And you have to give credit to Wiggy and the coaches at Leicester last season for coming up with a plan which enabled them to beat us. When I suppose we were favourites as well for that. But I suppose that's why, in answer to your question before, like it doesn't, in finals maybe it doesn't really matter who the favourites are, because if the favourites always won, then sport wouldn't be very interesting and no one would come and watch, and it would just be all pretty boring. So in that sense as well, I suppose what you mentioned about Al, obviously knows us really well. I'd say we'll have taken a bit of we'll have had a good final last year and how Leicester did it, and not that we're expecting anything. We hope that we're ready for however the game pans out. But if it does turn out to be a bit like last season's final, then I think we're in a better place to deal with that this time.
Yeah, where do you think that that the Saracens game has actually picked up since last year? Where do you think you put some real edge on the game?
Yeah, I think a lot's been spoken about our attack, and how we're open to opportunities from our own half. So last season, the final, Wiggy kicked the G off the Gilbert, and we were in our own half a lot, and we sort of had defensive rucks in our own half, which we was kicking back to them. Whereas now, I think you'll have seen this season that we're racing back to field these kicks, and if the space is on to attack from those positions, then we're going to take that. And we've been working hard on our skills and our decision making to make the most of those opportunities, as opposed to just kicking the ball back, which is what we did last season in the final, and which ultimately it cost us, because we spoke. Faz has obviously been been behind this and driving it a lot, and he said to us that it's a lot easier to go from having an open mindset where you're open to opportunities and then bringing it back in and drawing it back in to then go to that kicking game. It's easier to go from there to a kicking game than it is to go from a kicking game to like trying to see opportunities. So yeah, everyone's seen it this season. We've been better in that sense, and the attack's been good. And I suppose from a defensive point of view, I think the way we defended against Northampton, we sort of rolled back the years a little bit with our defence. I think we made 250 tackles, and obviously Northampton's attack has been sort of lauded this season and in previous seasons, and we dealt with them pretty well. So it's going to take a bit of both this weekend to get the job done.
You mentioned that the attack has changed, and I think Sarries over the past few years have obviously come under a bit of criticism sometimes for playing a certain way, i.e. platform up front, like you say, kick the G off the Gilbert, as you mentioned with Wigglesworth last year. Now, that seems very, very different this year, and that's been widely covered. But particularly in terms of the backline, it feels like the Saracens backline is about as potent as I've ever seen it. Now, one thing that sort of intrigues me about that is the structure of the backline is arguably slightly different to a typical backline structure, i.e., as dynamic as you and Nick Tompkins are in the carry, for example. You're not, the Manu Tuolangi and Andre Esterhazen type role that works so well in other backlines in the Premiership. So what do you think the keys have been to unlocking that potency that we've seen?
Yeah, it's definitely connections, time on the field together, time on the video together, looking at things, looking at how our lines and our connections and how close we are to each other when we're coming round, those types of things, and basically where you're putting yourself once you've identified an opportunity and seen space. These are the types of things that we've been working on, for basically 11, 12 months now. So it's good. It's been nice to see that it's worked a lot of the time. Obviously against La Rochelle, we came unstuck and we weren't able to execute on that day, which is obviously a huge disappointment for us. Not being able to do it in a quarter final, but by and large, it has been really good. And I think obviously the team has changed, not just in the backs, but obviously our forwards as well. And we're maybe more of a team now that is more suited to moving the ball, moving the point of contact a little bit. Obviously, when we had the likes of Will Skelton and Vince Bach and Scott Berger, Mikey Rhodes, these types of guys who are incredibly abrasive and physical and can just carry through brick walls. Played a slightly different way, but I think with the players that we've got now, we've adapted. And as I said, this season, by and large, it's been pretty good, and we've adapted pretty well. But it won't count for much if we don't do it on the weekend now, and we know that we want to do that.
I wonder if perhaps the biggest change in personnel from what you'd term the golden era of Saracens is possibly Brad Barrett, who was an incredibly underrated player, but he was the fulcrum for about a decade, wasn't he, midfield? Very underrated player, but a very particular player, wasn't he, Brad? He could do the heavy, the hard stuff in midfield. He was also more skillful than given credit. But if you've got him there for a decade, that's how Saracens played. When he retired, there was a chance there for yourself and Nick Tompkins in particular to really express yourself in midfield. And I wonder if that might be part of the reason that the changes, it's really come in a rush now this season, but it's been coming probably since Brad retired and stepped down a few years ago. Yeah,
I think, well, the first thing I'd say is I think if Brad was still available now, we'd have him in the team somewhere. So, that's for sure. Definitely one of the best players I've ever played with, best captains. Just an inspirational kind of guy who led by example, and you wanted to back him up. But yeah, of course, everyone has different skill sets. And then Nick's sort of come into that position and made it his own since Brad has retired. And Nick's no he can carry as well. He can carry the ball as well, and he's a big physical guy, and he can pin ball out of tackles and get his hands free. And there are some similarities there, but then equally there's things that Nick likes to do that maybe Brad didn't do. So and that's not to say that one way is better than the other, or they both work. So but yeah, we're just playing to our strengths now, which is what we have to do.
It must be almost a natural thing given the makeup of the backline, Alex. There's yourself, there's Alex Good, there's Max Maidens, I think, has spent some time at 10 as well. And then obviously you've got Owen. So if you've got four people who, if not raised exclusively as outside halves, have spent some time at outside half, that must help in terms of identifying space and opportunity, because that's first and foremost, I guess, what a 10 is there to do. And if there's a whole bunch of you capable of making those decisions on the ball, it must be a natural, the style you're playing at the moment must be a natural consequence of your personnel.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like you say, I grew up as a youngster playing a bit of 10 before moving out. Like you say, Max as well, Goody, and someone like Elliot Daly as well, who despite not having played 10, his ability to look up and take pictures of the defence and see where we need to be going is world class, to be honest with you. So and I think like you say, having played 10, I know what it's like. As a 10, you often a lot of the time you're looking at the ruck and where the ball's coming from, and you are relying on your teammates on your outside to tell you what to do, tell you where the space is, whether that's a kick in behind or play with the forwards, or to move it out to the back line. Those are the types of things that when you play 10 you appreciate from your teammates. So then I think, like you say, those guys all having that understanding of what helps Faz allows everyone to be on red alert to be looking for that space.
And it also brings someone like Ben Earl with his skill set right to the fore, doesn't it? Because apart from all the stuff he does on the floor, which has been brilliant for some years, and particularly brilliant this season. There's a bit of the old-fashioned support line, open side flanker about him as well. Covering long distances to get on the shoulders of the outside backs. So the way you're playing now really gives his full skill set a pretty big platform.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Ben's got pace, like, which is, for any defender, that's what frightens you the most as a defender, is an attacker who's got pace. Obviously, seeing the game on the weekend and in the Champions Cup and how La Rochelle ends up overpowering Leinster with their physicality and their direct ball carrying, which is one big way of winning big games. And it's maybe what we used to be a bit like with the players that we had, but the likes of Ben Hart, with having Ben now, who again has had an unbelievable season in that 7 position, and just playing to his strengths and understanding what he likes and where he wants to be getting the ball, and the space that he likes to find himself in. And as I said, when you've got someone who's that explosive, powerful, but also just like bloody quick, you want to be using that as much as possible. And it's definitely part of our plan is to get him on the ball in space, to use his speed.
Alex, what do you make of I think it was Stuart Barnes that wrote about the sort of remodeled Sale, and obviously the Sale resurgence, I think you'd agree, is, it's very good for the Premiership ultimately. Stuart Barnes has sort of cited the way they play now and the power and bulk they provide up front, their kicking game. There's been lots of emphasis on George Ford's spiral bombs and how difficult that was. Even we saw it with Freddie Stewart, the best, best under the high ball in the world probably, and the struggles he had with it. What do you make of this sort of old Saracens 2.0 comparison between Sale and the way that Saracens used to play, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it to a certain extent. I think it's, like for teams that are sort of on the come up, which I think, they feel like they're on the come up, which is true. I think, they've been for the last sort of 10 seasons, mid-table type team. I think they might have made the playoffs once in the last 10 years before this season. So, they've been in and around that middle part of the table. And I think one quick way of making yourself competitive is perhaps going to that sort of old style, Sarries style of play where, you kick and chase and you defend and you become difficult to beat in that sense. So I can see that. I think they've got more to their game than just that, to be honest with you. I think obviously they've recruited really well with, being able to get Fordy up there. Obviously everyone knows how good he is. And with Manu there as well on his outside, they obviously know each other very well, got a good relationship. And so having Fordy in the team coming in this season, it gives them an extra dimension in terms of ball movement and sophisticated attack, which maybe doesn't necessarily fit in with that just kick and chase and defence game. So I think they do deserve a bit more credit than just being a team built on being hard to beat in a defence and a kick and chase. But I can kind of see where Stuart Barnes is coming from there, because that style of rugby is a good way of becoming difficult to beat and sort of getting results and going from being a sort of average enough mid-table team to like a playoff team.
I guess, Alex, getting the emotional the emotional temperature right when it comes to big occasions like this is pretty critical. You're losing Jackson Ray after this game, and I suppose Sale losing John O'Ross, I think I'm saying, who's been a pretty influential figure up there in his own particular rugged kind of way. We saw it with Parise in the Challenge Cup final. There was a lot of stuff around Parise before that game, and there was a clip in the changing room before the match. and he was doing all the talking. Now, you might expect that from a bloke who's captained an international side as much as he has, but he wasn't the captain, but he was doing a hell of a lot. Do those big departures or departures of people who were integral to the success of a club, does that play a role in the emotional makeup of a final, or is that just an irrelevance, really? We got better things to think about than the fact that you're quitting, Jackson, much as we love you. I mean, which way round does it work?
I think when you're actually playing the game in the 80 minutes, it's not necessarily something you think about too often, but I think in the build-up, it definitely is. We've had 2 weeks to build up to this game now, and we're going to be losing the likes of Jackson, Duncan Taylor. These are guys who have made a massive difference at our club, and so to be able to spend these 2 weeks with guys like that, Max as well. Max is moving on. Been a brilliant player for us. These are guys who we've enjoyed spending time with, and we've done a lot together. We've all done a lot together and made a lot of memories together. So I think in the build up to it, you do tap into that sort of like I say, that emotional thing where you hope that everything you're doing in those 2 weeks is going to allow you to then put out a good performance on the weekend on Saturday. So I think it is important, and it's definitely something that we've paid attention to and we've paid homage to them. And I'm sure it'll be the same up in Sale. Obviously, I've played against John O for years now.
That's a real barrel of laughs that.
Yeah, no, we've had a bit of back and forth over the years, and but ultimately there's respect there, and he's been a top player for Sale. I think over 150 games and whatnot, and it's important to tap into those things because these players deserve it. They deserve to be celebrated. For us, Jackson and Duncan, we're going to miss them a lot, and we just want to. We wanted to enjoy last week. We want to enjoy this week, being together, and it might give you that little edge somewhere. You might get off the floor that little bit quicker, or hit it that little bit harder because that you did it for your mate who it's the last game.
When you look at someone like Jackson, Alex, he's a one club player. More often than not, he's been the only uncapped player in a Saracens starting lineup. Far more often than not. How do you square the fact that he's retired without an international cap, or is retiring without an international cap? How do you square that fact with his contribution to an incredibly successful side? Because he's played all three back row positions. I mean, there have been times when you've been skinned of players because of international call-ups, and you've depended massively on him. Massively.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right. It just seems a bit unlucky. I mean, he must feel unlucky, and I think what he's put into Saracens, the success he's had, the number of games he's played, the way he's played in the big games, the way he's played in the international windows and the tough games. He deserved the cap. But I think he probably knows that. And even though he would rather have a cap, he knows how much he's appreciated at Saracens. That's there's no questioning that whatsoever. And he will go down as one of the best ever Saracens. So if that's any consolation for Jackson, then hopefully he can take it as that, because he's potentially just been unlucky to be in an era of brilliant back rowers in England, which there have been some brilliant ones, and maybe just sort of not being able to shine as much as he might at another club, because the Sarries forward pack for sort of most of his 300 games was pretty much like a British and Irish Lions forward pack, where potentially it's easy to get lost in that a little bit. So yeah, I'll never understand why he never got a cap, but he'll definitely go down as a Sarries great, and he knows that we all appreciate him.
Well, Austin Healey always said, didn't he, that his versatility cost him lots and lots of caps. I mean, the fact that he didn't win as many caps as he thought he should have done is because he's bloody annoying. But Jackson is all. I mean, he was never fundamentally any particular back row player, was he? He was just a back row player, and he could do anything pretty much. A bit like Richard Hill in a sense, although Richard was, an extraordinarily gifted player. Do you think maybe just a lack of a set position cost him in the end?
Potentially, yeah. I think that could have come into it. I think I've always sort of felt that Jackson's best position was at 7. I think he's had pace. He's not as quick as he once was, but he did have pace.
Comes to us all.
And that set him apart. But obviously, Ben playing 7 now for us means that he sort of shifted around a little bit. But I think at his best, he was at 7. And yeah, like you say, I think perhaps like just being that versatile and maybe just chopping and changing, maybe that meant that national selectors were sort of wondering, where does he fit in? What's his best position? That type of thing. So that could have been a curse for him. But from a Sarries point of view, it meant that he was loved and appreciated, and he still is, and he will be for a long time. I think he'll be referenced at Saracens for years and years and years for what he's done and the way he's gone about his work every day. So
dead right, gonna start. Yeah.
He'll be remembered in the right by us for sure.
On the subject of unsung heroes, Alex, Mark McCall, obviously a Test player. I'm assuming at some stage in the 10 years he could have named his price to be a Test coach. And Mark's always sort of pretty polite with us and helpful, but he never really gives us that much. He's a bit of a difficult coach to get a handle on because we don't see what he does behind the scenes. What he does is obviously incredible because he just makes, average players into good players into great players. The club just has this incredible ability to transform players in the modern era. But just give us a bit of a handle on what makes Mark McCall, year after year, an extraordinary coach.
Yeah, I think Mark, he doesn't like the limelight. He's happy to let other people speak. As you guys may have. So he's. I think that comes from like a level of sort of humbleness, I suppose. And he just, I'd say, as a coach, I think it's his attention to detail, and I think just the constant push for improvement. We had, for example, we had a good performance against Northampton. Probably thought we'd be coming in on the Monday, and it'll be sort of pats on the back and high fives, which there was definitely a little bit of that, and the coaches would tell us that we did do some good stuff, but Mark was pretty quick to say well done, but also like, here, this, what about this, we can do better, we need to do this for the Premiership, if we want to be the team that we want to be next season, we need to do this better. So he doesn't really miss a trick, doesn't get carried away, and I'd say he just has absolutely all bases covered. Any base that you can imagine, any base that you couldn't imagine, he's imagined it, and it's so. I think that level of detail and that level of that attention to detail, and relentlessness with it, really, the relentlessness is something that I've not seen before. So that's why he's so good.
Very quick story about Mark McCall. When the Independent shut down as a paper and I was thrown out of work, it's all right. I'm not bitter. I've got over it now. But I sent an email around to all the Premiership directors of rugby just to thank them for their help down the years. And Mark wrote back saying, "Thank you for your very kind message, but I don't remember giving you any help."
We apologise.
Alex, talking about international selection, things haven't gone your way on that front, or didn't, with Eddie Jones in the frame as head coach. Are things looking up with Steve Borthwick being there?
Well, I suppose, yeah, I think anything's an improvement probably from where I was after what happened with Eddie. But yeah, you know, I've known Steve for well, since he was the assistant coach at England back in 2016 when I was first in the squad, and you know, I've had a pretty good relationship with him ever since then. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't involved in the Six Nations, which was, I suppose, when he's first come in and picked his first squad. So I get, as it always is, disappointing to miss out on that. But sort of stayed in contact with Steve and the other coaches, and just trying to do the things that they want to see, really. And yeah, you never know. I'll never give up. I'll keep playing, trying to play my best, and if that's good enough, then that'd be brilliant. And I'd love to do it again. So yeah, one more game this weekend to try and obviously it's not about me, it's about the team, but just to do my best and see where that leaves me.
Italy have been in touch with you, haven't they, Alex, at various junctures, and you've decided that to stick with England? Yeah,
so I've had conversations with Kieran Crowley, probably going back to, well, since the rule change, I think it was autumn 2021, where I became available. And obviously, having never met Kieran, but obviously spoken to him on the phone and got to know him that way. A huge amount of respect for Kieran as a man and as a coach, and obviously sort of thanked him for reaching out and, I guess, extending the opportunity my way. But having already played for England and sort of not feeling like I'm done with it yet, it wasn't really a difficult decision for me to say no, if I'm honest, because yeah, I feel pretty English, to be honest with you. I know, having already played for England, that's something I want to do again, and that was as simple as it was, really.
Do you mind if I ask you about the fallout from that Japan game, and how you went about? I don't know whether it affected confidence or anything, but rebuilding your game. Not that it needed necessarily rebuilding, but there's certainly a mental side of things, isn't there, to where it is now?
Yeah, I think obviously that was a disappointing day. I think if I could go back and play one game in my career, it would be that one. And if I could get another shot at it, do it again, that would be the one, obviously. Yeah, no, I suppose, like, bouncing back from that, I think I've played better rugby since then. I went to France, did something different, experienced something new, played in a different league, which is, the style of play is completely different to what it's like in England. So that sort of learning curve for a year was brilliant for me, and then having come back, yeah, I just think it's just been like a bit of a journey which I've enjoyed being on. Obviously, I think I was pretty disappointed for I'd say over a year probably with how it all ended, and maybe let it get to me a little bit. But eventually you have to park it and move on, as they say. And yeah, I feel like when I got to France, I was able to do that. Since then it's been. I think I've been playing better now than I was back then. So yeah, I suppose it was disappointing, but maybe it needed to happen.
Can I just stick up for you there, Maestro? I think I was doing player ratings that day. I thought you were having a pretty decent match. England weren't playing well, and they had that one sloppy 10-minute period. I thought it was incredibly harsh and incredibly short-sighted of Eddie just to sort of make that. It's almost like you were made the scapegoat for an unimpressive England performance on the day, and just shows how brutal sport is at the top end.
Yeah, I think it is brutal, and you know, I think like no one missing tackles is, you know, it's always a bit embarrassing in rugby. It's something I find, obviously I don't like doing, and that one was the, you know, the worst one I've ever had, really, and it cost me, obviously. But you know, I think maybe I'll try and look at it in a positive way, and I think, as I said just a minute ago, I do believe I'm a better player now than I was then, and maybe having done that and experienced that and been in the team and out of the team for a long time now, those are the things that maybe you need to go through to help you grow and progress and get better and want to keep getting better, and yeah.
Yeah, I'll second what Brent said. If Eddie dropped everybody who missed a tackle for England, he wouldn't have had any players to pick from.
You and I would have been out there, Nick.
You wouldn't have been.
Well, I might have been on the bench or just the bench. That's possible. But no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Billy Twelvetrees paid pretty heavily for. He always seemed to miss tackles on Matamua. I mean, and they were always 5 meters from the line. You know, I mean, he you know, two different games, two different Wallaby tries, same people involved. You know, Gary Ringrose missed one on Saturday, a big one.
Mm-hmm.
A big one, got sat down very publicly.
Yeah, and they
never played for Ireland again.
Well,
just one final question from me, Alex. You were talking about, well, how you're a better player now than you were back then. Are you also enjoying rugby more now than you were back then?
yeah, I mean, I've not enjoyed rugby this much probably ever, to be honest with you. I think, well, maybe that's unfair, but you know, when you come into professional sport, professional rugby as a youngster, you're like full of enthusiasm and you just want the next target, and you're just chasing it, and you know, you're doing what you love and it's your job, and it's brilliant. You know, and then I suppose, yeah, potentially after having got in the England squad when I was like a really young player, again, brilliant, enjoying it, and then you know, you go out, you come out of it, and certain things get you down a little bit, or maybe you're not playing as well, and that affects your mood a little bit. So yeah, those are probably like the ups and downs of it. But I think, as I said, going to France for a year, even though it was a tough year to begin with and we lost a lot of games, that experience really, I really believe, sort of set me up to come back to England and rejoin Sarries and, you know, really start properly getting stuck into my rugby again and enjoying it and enjoying what I'm doing, enjoying my training, just enjoying being with my teammates, enjoying being out there on the weekend playing. I don't think I never enjoyed it, but I think it's just like being grateful for it and cherishing it a little bit. And, you know, it's like we said before, like, not going to play with Duncan again and Jackson again after this weekend. You know, I sat next to Jackson for 8 years in the changing room. You know, played hundreds of games with Duncan. You got to enjoy it. That's what it's all about. And yeah, I think I definitely am enjoying it, and we all are. So hopefully we have one more enjoyable day on Saturday, and we'll be happy.
Rugby memories are pretty special, Alex. Could I just, I don't want to be too much of a downer about things, but just on you would have cherished your time at Wasps as well. And you played some good games and with some big players, and a little bit like Saracens, Wasps always had a reputation of having this really close-knit sort of blue collar feel about them. You all mucked in together, and it was almost more than the sum of its parts at times because of the closeness of the bond. Can you give us some idea of your reaction to the state of the the Wasp story at the moment, because it's pretty depressing. That goes without saying. But from somebody who's been there and participated in it, albeit back in the day, can you give us some idea of how you've reacted?
Yeah, I think without a doubt. I think, you know, actually I should have mentioned with the previous question about enjoying it. You know, we're lucky to be doing what we're doing. We're lucky to be even playing on the weekend in a final. Given what's happened with Wasps and Worcester, and you know, reading bad or sort of ominous news about London Irish as well. You know, we're lucky to be doing what we're doing, so we need to enjoy it. We have to enjoy it because we're being afforded opportunities that other professionals have had taken away from them, which is dreadful. Obviously, the Wasps one, having played there myself for 2 seasons, my family having very strong connections with the club. You know, my dad was captain there, played 260 games, and a lot of his best friends now are from those days when playing in the 80s, and you know, that sort of family dynamic that you pick up over the years. To have that, for that to disappear is, you know, it is awful. And obviously still had a lot of really good friends at Wasps when it all happened. And you know, also, like, you know, what happened with what happened at Saracens when we were relegated and you know, sent down, and you know, there were other teams and people trying to bury us, and basically you know, hoping that we never come back, basically. So we don't know what it's like for it to actually happen, but it wasn't that far away. It took the loyalty of staff and players really to, I think, and obviously you know, our backers, for it to sort of keep going. So to see it happening at other clubs, it is dreadful, and I just hope it can get better. I hope these clubs come back. I hope Wasps and Worcester find their way back to where they should be. I hope London Irish, whatever's going on there, I hope that gets resolved, because you know, we need them to, and the sport is better with these clubs in it. So yeah, fingers crossed.
You played in France, as you said, Alex, and I mean, they have 4 professional leagues there at the moment, and that club game is booming, absolutely booming. And I think we all know the reasons. Some of them are demographic reasons, some of them are structural reasons, and what have you, why the French game is as it is. But do you hope, and it may be a long-term thing, do you hope that one day English club rugby will be, if not identical to France, at least in a state where there's a growing number of clubs and a growing amount of ambition, and the pathways from promotion and relegation and all that kind of thing? I mean, it's a political hot potato at the moment, but would the dream be in X years' time that we can sort of replicate the French system to a degree?
I mean, yeah, I think that has to be the dream. I think it's like you say, a long way off at the moment. You know, you saw, for example, the celebrations going on in La Rochelle over the weekend, was unbelievable. And but you know, but that comes from generations of support. You know, I think if you drew a line that probably across from Bordeaux over to Lyon on the map, everything down from there is just rugby crazy, rugby mad, right? And those towns get behind their teams, and they have done for generations, and their dads support the team, and their granddads and their great granddads and their great grandmoms. It's just like part of the way of life, which you know, isn't the same in England, probably because it's competing with some other incredibly popular sports, you know, like football, whatever it might be. So I think it ultimately is a popularity thing, and we need to find ways of making rugby popular. and attractive to supporters. And then I think that's where, the scenes like you get in the Port and La Rochelle, that's where that comes from. So in an ideal world, I'd love to see it. I think I'm not sure if any of us will still be here by the time English rugby.
The great thing is, though, that they were a second division team until what? Was it 5 years ago?
Yeah. So they've done it. They've come up the leagues and obviously got Ronan Gogara over there heading it up and done a brilliant job in getting big players to buy into it, and the improvement of the team has been rapid and amazing, really. So and obviously the town's got behind it, or the city's got behind it, which is it's a pretty deadly combination.
Alex, just before you go, could I trouble you for 5 minutes to do our quick fire question section?
Of course.
15 quick fire questions just about you, if you're happy to plunge into it.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. Nickname?
Loz.
Best rugby memory?
2017 European Cup final when we beat Clermont.
Most embarrassing rugby memory?
Anytime I miss a tackle.
Pre-game tune?
I don't know. Pink Floyd. We'll go Pink Floyd.
Post-game meal?
Pizza.
Best player you've played against?
Nonu.
Best player you've played with?
George Smith.
Favorite player right now?
Ujay Satani.
Nice. Rugby idol?
It's got to be Johnny.
Favorite stadium?
Twickenham.
Favorite gym exercise?
None of them. What would it be? Shoulder press.
Okay, nice. That's a new one. Occupation if rugby didn't exist?
Is this what I'd actually have to do, or dream? Dream on golfer.
Okay, and what would you have? What would you have the skill set for?
Order.
Hard.
Order. We don't know. We just don't know.
It's ongoing. I've just been writing my CV this last month, so can I get back to you?
Yeah. Okay.
No. That's what your prospective employers will say to you.
Hopefully not. Superstitions?
Not really that superstitious, but always have beans on toast morning of the game.
Morning of the game or evening of the game, did you say?
Morning before the game. Breakfast has always been on, has been since I was about 6 years old. So, yeah.
Rugby law you would change?
Oh, that's a good one. Without trying to sort of get too noisy and bore everyone, I think with the amount of penalties there are at the ruck these days, I'd say that if there's one thing that I think might be fun is that if there's like a jackal turnover and someone gets over the ball and wins a turnover that way, it has to be a tap and go penalty from there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the games can change so much on these moments where there's a jackal turnover like in midfield and then all of a sudden kick into the corner and then someone's got a driving line out and it could be a try, whereas and it's happening so often that maybe a fun one would be if Jack Willis has got over the ball and won a turnover, he's got to tap and go. Something like that.
Does that work both ways? So if someone gets pinged for jackling off their feet or something, then that has to be a tap and go as well?
Yeah, I think maybe it would be fun because there's so many of them in every game these days that and it leads to massive territorial sort of wings. Maybe a fun way of sort of speeding the game up as well might be doing that, but can't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's an unlikely one. But that's very, very interesting. Lastly, best thing about working in rugby.
Just getting to spend time with your mates every day and do something together that you love doing. And I think it's a sport where you do it for, you don't do it for yourself, you do it for your teammates and the guy next to you, and that's what's fun about it, I think.
Awesome.
You just get a gold award for Pink Floyd, Alex. You're the first person who's named a musical act that any of us apart from Oliver have ever heard of. Everyone else says Snoop Doggy Dog or bloody Dizzy Rascal or whatever his name is, and you've actually come up with, well, I'm in awe. I'm in awe.
Only because I like pretty crazy guitar solos, which are pretty fun to listen to.
I bet your dad had it all the time as well, and you grew up with it.
Yeah, exactly. You have made yourself sound like an old fogey, but take no notice. You're on the side of the angels.
Answer. Skepta instead or something like that.
Yeah, I doubt Chris has heard a Skepta, if I'm entirely honest.
Was he talking in ancient Hittite or something? What's he on about?
Alex, that's awesome. I'll let you go now. All the best for Saturday. I'm going to ask these guys for predictions. I won't ask you for one, so I'll wait till you've gone for that. But go on Saturday, enjoy. And yeah, we're all really looking forward to it.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Go well, Maestro.
Cheers, Alex.
Cheers.
Go well.
Bye.
Right, let's jump straight into that before we do a little bit of a retrospective look on Europe. Predictions. Let's get a score. Let's get a team and a winning margin, please, from everyone.
Oh.
I think this has got extra time written all over it.
Mm.
I think honestly, I think it's incredibly. It's within. It could easily be within a score. You know, I mean, within a penalty.
Yeah,
easily. I think that it's a game of really exciting contrasts. I think if Saracens can get some parity around set piece, not be really shoved against a wall. I mean, they don't get shoved around, but if they could edge a set piece, I think they win because I think their backs are better.
Yeah.
But with Ford on the field and the whole Ford Farrell thing is like a subplot of itself, isn't it? But with Ford on the field, if Sale are in the game, you know, within touching distance or marginally in front after an hour, I think he's more than capable of managing them home. So it'll be absolutely fascinating. I wouldn't stick not that I have many pennies now, because I don't know whether I mentioned the fact that the Independent was closed down and I got lobbed out of work. But I wouldn't put a penny of the money I don't have on this result.
Without the violins.
I mean, we got enough for a string quartet here.
Yeah, you'd be playing them all.
So, Chris, that was a lot of words. With
Just say I don't know.
Okay, cool.
I don't know.
Okay.
Apologies to listeners that had to be subjected to that for no real answer.
Well,
Brendan, let's come to you.
Well, I would endorse all that Chris said, but I'm going to put my head above the parapet and Sale by 3 points. I got absolutely no logic or reason for that. But I just a slight filling of the waters. It's set up for a Charlie Hodgson headline and story. So he'll either drop a goal in the 98th minute or something. I'm a bit worried about the two forwards. They lost, injured forwards. It takes the edge off their pack a little bit. Yeah. But why not? They're both terrific sides. Sale by 3.
Did you say Charlie Hodgson? Is he playing?
Did I say Charlie Hodgson? No.
Yeah, you did.
I did say Charlie Hodgson. George Ford. Very similar players.
Yeah. I think Pete Anglesey will roar in for a try as well.
Who are the
and Quates is coming back, I hear.
Who are the injured players, Bren?
Hmm?
Who are the injured forwards?
Well, Ben Curry and which Dupree was it got injured? Was it Dan?
Yeah, it was Dan.
Yeah. So I mean, you know,
is Fripp still playing?
they rely so much, don't they, on the power of that pack to release the backs. But no, it'll be hellish. It'll be a good match.
I'd say Saracens, and I'd say I'm looking at sort of 25-18, something like that. Probably one score in it, but I think Saracens will win it. And the reasons are because I thought, what Sale have done this season is great. They've improved massively. But I just think, and Alex Sanderson talked about it after the game against Leicester, they had a number of chances in the first half and they didn't take them. Those chances that they got in the second half, they finished extremely well, and they're a dangerous side, there's no question. But I think that the Saracens' defence against Northampton was the old wolf pack back to its best. And I'm not sure how many chances that Sale will get. And they, whatever they do get, they're going to have to take. So that's one thing. The other thing that bothers me a bit about Sale is that they've got one or two guys who are penalty magnets, and indiscipline in big games, cup finals can be terminal. So
I'm talking about their retiring captain.
Penalty can be very important, I think.
There are a few.
The penalty count will be key, I think.
Yeah.
If Saracens who tend to get away with a little bit on around the breakdown but they're good and they're pretty clean, but if they do get on the wrong side of the referee and they end up in their own 22 defending lineouts, Sale are pretty strong there. I mean, they've got a lot of power and a lot of muscle.
Yeah. No, sorry. My point was that Sale have got a number of.
Oh, they have. No, I was just trying to broaden out the discussion.
I see. So you
traditional fashion to say whoever gets on the wrong side of the referee could be a bit of a long afternoon, actually.
Yeah.
But Sale are very threatening in the red zone. From set piece.
Yeah.
Because they're strong, man. I mean, crikey. They really are a bullying South African type side. They are.
Yeah, and they've got two. They seem to have now two. Their bench front row is pretty effective. Oosthuizen is playing as well as I think I've seen him play. Since he first came into the South African side, he's looking pretty good.
Well, it's a big game for Mako. Big game for Mako Vunipola because we said 100 times. If 90% of the time, Mako's scrummaging, is not an issue. But if he was as good a scrummager as he is at everything else in the game, as he is at everything else in his game, he'd have been the greatest loose head ever to play. But it isn't. So he isn't. He has been exposed on big occasions by aggressive, tight head attacking scrummaging. Yeah. He has. And they've got a couple.
Yeah.
Sale. Shona is no mug. And neither is Oosthuizen, as you say.
And so, if you were looking at unsung heroes, I mean, Rod has come on this season. There's no question about that. And
yes, he has. Yes, very much.
Simon McIntyre is definitely one of the unsung heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Chris, can I ask you one last time if you want to get off the fence?
I think Saracens will win by 3.
Okay. Yeah, Nick, your monologue has just persuaded me in Saracens' direction as well, and you are on a bit of a roll. If I remember rightly, you were the only one to predict La Rochelle.
Yeah, and Toulon.
No, we all predicted Toulon.
We all did Toulon, yeah.
Chris, did you predict Toulon?
I wasn't there. I had to.
You're right. Yeah.
I made an early escape because in fact I just invented a reason to get out of the way. My predictions, including for Wales to give Ireland a complete toweling in the first round of the Six Nations Championship. My predictions have not been brilliant, although I did predict the Georgian victory over Wales last autumn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not letting anyone forget that. So yeah, I'll go with Sarries by a score as well. Speaking of that La Rochelle prediction, Nick, Miles Harrison said it was the greatest final ever of the Heineken Cup. 1, do you agree with that? And 2, if not, it was still pretty damn good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to do a sort of ready reckoner on there have been some fantastic Heineken Cup finals, some fantastic ones. So and that was certainly one of the best that I've seen. Whether it was the absolute best, I mean, that Alex mentioned it earlier on, that Saracens win over Claremont in Edinburgh back in 2017, I think that was a hell of a performance. Because Claremont were a very, very good side at the time. So and desperate to get their hands on the trophy as well. So yeah, there have been some fantastic games. Some of the Wasps, the Wasps.
Wasps Toulouse, Leicester, Stade Francais, Breed Leicester in another way actually was
Leinster Northampton, their first ever title.
The Leinster Northampton game was fun. I mean, that must have been nearly as big a comeback as the one we saw on Saturday.
Yeah. So there have been some great ones, but this was a great performance. And Brent, I read your piece about the Leinster skullduggery at the Ruck, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, they got away with it against Toulouse in a big way, and totally swamped Toulouse as a consequence of it. They've got some great players. Those are great back row forwards. Doris and Van der Fleer, and Henshaw is like a bloody, a third back row forward, as is Sheehan a fourth. So they've got some great players, but your comparison with what the All Blacks used to do and what they'd get away with, and how referees sort of doffed the cap to them too much and weren't looking at what was in front of them. Some of the stuff that was going on. I mean, they picked out one clip of Ringrose just sort of hurdling across the La Rochelle side of a ruck and trying to mess it up.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that there's quite a bit of traffic now on some of the rugby websites about what happened at half-time and why. We know there was a bit of pushing and shoving and arguing between the two teams in the tunnel. And it does seem that Leinster put, it is claimed, I hope this is not actionable, it is claimed on more than one rugby website that Leinster put someone in front of the referee's door because they damn well knew that Roger was going to be in talking to Piper about the breakdown. And the person they put in front of the door must remain nameless, but it was Sean O'Brien.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not privy to everything that goes on in tunnels during the halftime of big matches. But if somebody doesn't want the opposition to get anywhere near the referee, there can only be two reasons.
Yeah.
One is that they don't want him to slip him a fiver, and the other one is that they don't want him talking the stuff that is obviously going really well for them, in the first half.
Well, somehow, Chris, the message did get across.
It certainly did.
Piper began to sort of look at what was in front of his eyes. But some of the performances, I mean, how on earth Australia have not managed to cotton on to the fact that they got a potential World Cup winning lock in Skelton. I mean, Skelton's performance, again, for the second year in succession, was just out of this world. Yeah. I mean, he's a fantastic rugby player.
They had two or three, didn't they? I mean, I thought Aldrich was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. He was off the Richter scale, Aldrich. He's amazing.
A very fine player, that bloke. Those two guys, as they grew into the game and at the big moments, they made huge contributions.
And Antonio as well. There was
he's improved. He's off the scale a better player than. I mean, he was a bloke who could scrummage once he reached the scrum, wasn't he? I mean, he was. I mean, crikey, there was nothing else to his game really. And now he's playing big chunks of matches as well.
Yeah, can I just put a word of praise in for him and Levani Bota? They arrived 9 years ago at La Rochelle, Pro D on peanuts. One had just given up a job as a prison officer. The other one was a Shakespearean actor wandering around New Zealand with his brother. They weren't big buck signings. They weren't Will Skelton. They were lads who, maybe like the equivalent would be, somebody joining Exeter just before they came up. They have improved. They've stayed loyal to the club. They've been instrumental to building that culture and that relationship with the civic, with the population, and they've become immense players in the process. So, again, they're not short of a bob or two, La Rochelle, but as ever, it's not all about the money. It never is all about the money. They have given their lives to that club and helped establish a culture whereby people like Skelton can come in and immediately pick up on it, as he did at Saracens, in fairness. Saracens made him a much better player. La Rochelle made him the world's best lock.
Yeah, but Ronan O'Gara knows all about this, the building the kind of the culture, to use the trendy word. That Munster side, the top end Munster sides that he played in. I mean, we were speaking to Alex Lozowski about the Saracens culture and the close knit, the bond that they have, which takes you through in the big games and in the crunch moments, in the championship minutes. That's what takes you through. It's not how much people are being paid, really. It's how much they're prepared to give for the cause. And Munster, who were quite a limited side in some ways at their best, but crikey, they were hard to beat because they were as thick as thieves, those guys. And O'Gara was a big part of it.
Yeah, but coming back, absolutely the case. But coming back to La Rochelle, I mean, what it says to me, and Bren, you've just talked about, how those blokes have been intrinsic to this club becoming double champions of Europe, and this crazy situation that we've got in English club rugby, whereby we've got total stasis. Because there's no promotion relegation, there's no opportunity for a La Rochelle or an Exeter. It's got to change. It's killing the game here, and you can see the injection of just huge pride, huge commitment to a cause that you see with a club like La Rochelle. And we've got to give clubs in this country that same chance to aspire, that same chance to realize their ambitions. And this Premiership cartel that's been allowed to exist is a disgrace.
I don't disagree with a lot of that. I mean, that's the comparison with what's happening in France. I know you can't grow tradition overnight, and they have all sorts of advantages and things that are particular to France that allows French club rugby to be what it is at the moment. Yeah. But the point, and they have a massive, it's the biggest rugby constituency in the world. Alex Lozowski was absolutely right. You draw that line from Bordeaux. In fact, you can now draw it from La Rochelle. Mm. And it won't be too much longer before you can draw it from Brittany, because Van got to the semi-final of the championship. I mean, they were a few points away from playing for promotion. Mm. And suddenly you've got a Brittany side. But
you're right that rugby in this, from the Midi South is bigger in France, just because of the size of the country, so on. But the southwest of this country is a rugby heartland too. And the idea that football doesn't exist, in the southern part of France is bullshit. There's plenty of football played there too.
There are, but it's not necessarily the biggest thing in town. I mean, obviously it is in Marseille and it is in Monaco. Yeah. But Montpellier, you've got an argument. Toulouse, you've got an argument. So it's good rugby. Just to go back on who played well for La Rochelle, the worrying thing from everyone else's point of view, I thought that the outside half, Astoy, was very, very good as that game unfolded. And he's one of those annoying blokes who looks as though he's completely unruffled at the end of a final. I mean, he looks as though he's just run on the field. And I thought he kicked beautifully. I thought the timing of his pass was excellent. I thought his options were good. And, France, we've known, have struggled at 10 to really have a game-shaping, game-managing 10 who's entirely dependable. And I'm not saying he's a finished article by a million miles, but he's going to be a good player that way.
Yeah, and they've got another Aussie who's being overlooked by our friend Eddie, to wear a Carvalho. I mean, what a scrum half!
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah.
Well, what a final! What a final! we hope if you were in La Rochelle that you've enjoyed the celebrations if you're still going. And we are going to have
good to drink a lot near water. Very, very poor idea to drink a lot on the dockside. Anything could happen.
You're speaking from experience, Chris.
Oh, indeed.
And a word for Toulon, who were very, very impressive in putting away Glasgow. Unfortunately, because of time, we aren't going to have too much time. Well, any time actually to discuss that, sadly, because
Charles Oliver, how good was he?
There we go. There we go. Cheslin Colby, how good was he?
Cheslin Colby, a fullback who's imperious in the air. He's 5'7". Joe Carpenter, about 5'9". He didn't miss a ball in the air in the semi-final the other week. I don't buy this nonsense about you have to be 6 foot forward to play fullback.
Well, Brice Dulin at the weekend as well. He's about 4'12".
He had a really good game, didn't he?
Yeah,
I thought he'd gone, but he had a really good game.
Yeah, the small fullback is coming back into fashion. But yeah, guys, we will wrap up there. Any of you going to Twickenham on Saturday, or will you be watching from home?
I can't afford to go.
No, I think that's fair.
What happened at the Independent? Remind me.
Old pauper Hewett, Christ.
I'm
Ready for the guy.
I'm popping out with these big issues in a minute.
Dear me. Well, enjoy the final from your sofa, Chris. And guys, I'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday. And to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.